Hi, my name is Jeff. I go by John Doe Juggalo. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing
Chucky Season 3, Episode 3, titled Jennifer's Body. And this episode, once again, I did enjoy, while at the same time I did have some problems with it. Mostly when it comes to how inconsistent the tone felt throughout this episode compared to the first two, which felt grounded pretty much the entire time. There was a lot of camp when it comes to a certain plot line that continues throughout this episode. And I'm honestly not too big on the camp. I mean, I've said this in the last two reviews. I really stated it in the first review that I'm really just not that big of a fan of all the camp, and that does shine a light in this episode, and it's not too over the top to where it took me out of the episode and it made me overall not enjoy it, because I did really enjoy it and I thought it was overall a pretty good episode.
Yeah, it was definitely a pretty good episode. Way more on that campy side. But I think that they went super deep into that camp on purpose.
Yeah.
So, but from the serious tone of the first two episodes to roll over into that little quick.
Yeah, it's kind of a slap in the face. Although the tone does feel more in line with Bride of Chucky than Seed of Chucky, if that's something that kind of worries you, or if you're more of a fan of the Bride of Chucky camp compared to the Seed of Chucky, then you're going to get probably a little bit more of the Bride of Chucky camp, if you enjoy that movie more. But overall with this episode, and what they reveal in this episode, and some of the surprise twists in this episode, really did make for an entertaining time. There was one particular fake out that had me on the edge of my seat. And
that would be technically, we'll talk about that in a minute, because that would technically be the second kill of the episode.
Yes.
Technically.
Yeah.
So let's roll back and talk about the first kill first.
Yeah.
The first kill was Kenan Thompson from Kenan and Kel. That's definitely my generation of an actor. But he got one of the F-bombs. That was really cool. I really dug that. And his death might actually be my favorite of the series. We're still right behind Devin Sawa's Priest, because that was just so fun and over the top. But this one was just gruesome. Definitely better, in my opinion, than the Secret Service agent now. Secret Service agent definitely, at this point now, was more of like a, here's what's in store for the season, and they just keep upping it and upping it and upping it. I mean, what he does with an umbrella, that was kind of nuts, don't you think?
Yeah, it was over the top, but the gore and the effects were pretty unreal, especially for a television show, which is something we've said for the first episode, is stuff they can get away with is pretty insane. This episode just doubles down on how crazy they can, how far they can go with the gore, and it's really surprising how far they can go with gore on a TV series. And that death was awesome. It's instantly going to be one of the most iconic kills in the franchise, for sure. Yeah, for sure. But I do want to roll over to the second death in the episode. It got me feeling really strange. When I was watching it for the first time, I had no idea that there was going to be any type of fake out. I heard a lot about the deaths in the season, not particular, but just how gory they were.
Yeah. And
I wasn't expecting the fake out that we got. And when I first watched it, I was speechless. Like, jaw dropped speechless, because I couldn't believe that they were actually doing it.
Yeah. If that's the way that character would have went out, I could see a lot of people being upset about it. But when they faked it out at the end, like,
yeah, it was.
Because I'm sitting there like, oh my god, this is gruesome. This is wicked. Because it was a wicked kill. I mean, just to the chest, to the face.
Yeah, it was really, really gruesome, and it would have been extremely upsetting if it wasn't a fake out. overall with the kills, they were really good and really over the top, but great, and a lot of iconic kills in this episode.
Yeah.
A lot of gore just splashed everywhere. And to kind of keep on the same topic of what they can get away with on TV, the amount of F-bombs that they drop in this episode, just with Chucky alone and with the other characters.
It was more than 10.
It was more than 10. Like some characters got back to back with the F-bombs, and that's something we've been talking about every week so far.
Yeah.
And this week, like with the gore, they just doubled down on the F-bombs in this episode, and it was hilarious.
It was like this whole episode was all, we're gonna go into it real hard. We're just gonna double down on everything. It was like double the gore, double the campiness, double the gruesomeness and the F-bombs and the language, and everything was just to 10.
Yeah,
to 10.
It was, everything was just cranked up in this episode, and I did really enjoy all of that when it came to what you could say is over the top. And when it comes to the story and how we progress it, now the first thing to mention is that this is a flashback to the end of season 2. We get to see how we lead up to the events of the very beginning of the premiere of the season, and we learn some interesting information about why Chucky is doing what he is doing this season, and it heavily involves the voodoo and Damballa, and it really makes it the forefront.
Yeah.
This season, because in the first few movies, it was used pretty much near the end of every movie, and it was important. It was a tool that was used. Later on in the franchise, the creator, Tom Mancini, he will say multiple times on interviews that he was never a fan of the voodoo. It wasn't his idea, and he just had to roll along with it because it was just a part of the franchise. He just had to do it. And this is the first time since the first few movies that it felt serious. We felt like we're actually taking the voodoo aspect of the franchise seriously and using it in a way to where it actually could be threatening to Chucky and making it serious. And I did enjoy that, because I do enjoy the voodoo. I'm not so much of a stickler on it as everybody else is. Everybody else is like, the voodoo is very important, very, very necessary. I think it's necessary, but I'm not like super hardcore on it, so it's not something that I complain about when it's used poorly, even though it has been used poorly in the later entries of the movies. But in this season, and especially in this episode, when we actually get to see what's going on, it's utilized pretty well with the story, and it's going to make for a very interesting rest of the season to see how it all unfolds with Damballa and the voodoo.
Yeah, which we find out in this episode too, how he got placed with the first family. Of course, he did it on purpose.
Yes.
But we know why he decided to go with the name Joseph, which there were hints in the other episodes. We hadn't talked about it. We talked about it, we had talked about it off stream.
Yeah.
About they lost a son. It was referenced last season, or not last season, the last episode last week. It was referenced that they had lost a son named Joseph. But I think it was kind of referenced twice. Like at one point, the name wasn't referenced, but the incident was referenced. So it wasn't referenced all at once. So we had to kind of put the pieces together, which we had kind of put them together. Well, this week they just kind of show that's how they got him, was going and visiting the grave of their lost son, sibling.
Yeah.
And Chucky's just sitting there at the gravesite.
Yep. And when it comes to that's the White House is not necessarily just there just for cool set design. He's there for a particular reason. It ties into the motivation this season. I think it is utilized well. Like I said, he's not just thrown in just because, just so he has another little playground to run around in. It's utilized in the story.
Maybe that. But they have a reason to give him that playground to run around.
Yeah, it's not just one note. There's a depth. There's a reason why he's there at the White House, particularly in this season. But The last thing I want to touch on is, since this is a flashback, we get to see what happened to Tiffany in this episode.
Yes, the court case and everything after she was... Well, did we know that she was arrested at the end of Season 2?
No,
At the end of Season 2, she drove off with Gigi and the doll with Caroline, correct?
Yeah.
That's how we seen her in.
We ended up in New York. We were at like the, I guess, motel, wherever she was staying in that building, in a building in New York, and then we see Chucky take off the Belle makeup, and then he starts chasing after her or whatever, and then it just cuts with him like slashing the knife down. That's how the season ends, and it picks right back up with that. You get to see immediately what happened after that, and how the events unfolded after that.
So really, this episode could work. This episode could work as the first episode of the season. You could watch this first.
Yes, you could watch this.
I don't think there's anything in this episode that would not make sense if you watched it after the season 2 finale.
Yeah, like they could have placed it that way, and you could watch it that way. It would make sense. It's strictly a flashback episode. It's just flashbacks for the whole 45-minute runtime. So you're really not missing any of the story that we got into in the last 2 episodes. They are just telling you the build up and the lead up to how we got there in the first place. Which
you just mentioned, 45-minute runtime.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy because this episode has been the shortest so far. It had a 42-minute runtime.
Yeah.
And a previously on.
Yeah.
So the previously on probably was 2 of those minutes. So this was about a 40-minute episode. It may have even been a little shorter.
Yeah.
Especially once you add in the credits. In terms of actual like screen time for actors and story progression, it may have been something like 38 minutes this week.
Yeah, it was pretty short, and that was something I liked, is the pacing. I think the pacing is good, and it's been consistently good all around the season. But in this episode, when it comes to the flashbacks, they just get right into it. They don't really draw anything out. It's just cut to this. Okay, now this is how this happened. This is how this happened. Just cuts back and forth, and the next thing you know, the episode's over. And that's how I felt all the other weeks. It's over. There's no more.
Yeah, the pacing this season, just in general, has been pretty good.
Yeah, they've done a really good job setting up the season with, and they know what they want to do, and they're pretty much jumping right into it. And I appreciate that, even in the premiere episode, that they just jumped into it and then gave us like a flashback episode 3 in, just so we could get straight to the action. But to get back to the court case, that, like I said in the very beginning, that's the problem I had with this episode, was the camp. And every time we cut back to the court case with Tiffany / Jennifer Tilly, it was just a little hard to watch. Like I said, just because the camp is cranked up to 11.
Yeah, she went very like, oh, I'm not Jennifer, I'm Tiffany.
Yeah.
And it was, and I think that's the first time, I could be wrong, but I think that's the first time the character's actually admitting to not being Jennifer.
Yeah. Yeah, she's full on just said, I'm Tiff. She's just pleading her case. She's telling the truth, but obviously it just sounds crazy, and no one's gonna believe her.
And then she's trying to get the insanity charge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a little campy. But we'll see where it takes us for the next episode. I'm hoping that since they leaned as hard as they did into the camp this time, I'm really kind of hoping that the next episode we at least get to see what's up with Gigi and what's going on with Glenda.
Yeah, because they were mentioned in this.
Yeah, because they were mentioned in this one, and we only have the one left, and we don't even know when the rest of the season is going to air. We're only getting the first half. Next week's like a mid-season break.
Yeah. And
we don't even know when the rest of it's coming back. Because of the writer's strike and the actor's strike. Yeah. It may have been written, but the actors are striking now too. So
yeah, and it hasn't ended yet.
So we don't know when they're going to get back into filming and get that together for us.
Yeah. But I do agree with what you said. I feel like, even though with Sita Chucky and Glenda, I'm not the biggest fan of those characters, I would still be interested to see exactly if they're still going to be playing a part in the rest of the story, or if they have officially left and they're gone. But nonetheless, they were mentioned in the episode, so there is a chance that they could come back. Maybe not in the next episode, maybe later in the season, or maybe next season if they get another season. But I'm not opposed to seeing them again and seeing how they could play into the story.
I mean, they're back into the doll now, so
yeah,
we got to figure out how that plays and how that's going to be. Because they are basically the same as they was in Seed of Chucky now.
Yeah, they're just back in the Glen doll.
So I wonder how super campy it'll be when they are back.
Yeah. But that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the episode. Overall, it was a positive. This is the only episode that I had, I guess you could say, major problems with, but they weren't even big problems where I don't want to watch the next episode.
It was just a little too campy for you, right?
Yeah, in certain spots. I think the stuff that they did with Chucky himself, in those segments of the episode, were handled really well, and I really liked the tone. It was a darker comedic tone.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed that because, like I said, there was still an edge to it, an edge of darkness to it. Overall, I did really, really enjoy the episode. I just had some problems with it, and I feel and I'm sure they're gonna be there for the rest of the season, but they won't be enough for me to not want to watch the rest.
Yeah, and it's not like it's getting bad.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited for next week's episode. I know that.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good one. I think that I'm hoping that they knew that they were only doing the first 4 episodes, so we get a nice little cliffhanger, mid-season break type of deal.
Yeah.
Something that's going to keep me thinking about it for a year, if that's
it
how long
needed,
it's going to be. 'Cause I'm kind of excited to see where we're going to go with this. So, yeah. I mean, I guess that's it, really, right? That's all we got to talk about this week on that?
Yep.
All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed our conversation, either last week or the week before or this week, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe and the bell, and you can catch us finishing off this season and possibly diving into other discussions in the future of other things, of other movies and TV shows and stuff. So, and then just be sure to have a discussion down in the comments.
Yeah.
This fella here has been commenting back on everyone's comments.
Yeah, so just make sure to check back into the video, and you'll probably see a reply from either one of us, but I like to make sure that I'm on top of staying in the comments and reading everybody's comments and replying to keep the conversation going after the video.
Yeah. All right. Well, you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next time.